popped out briefly over lunch to have a quick walk and spotted a caterpillar, which I didn't recognise immediately. I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. Just turn this round. So this caterpillar here, one of the noctuid moths, but I'm not immediately sure what species it is. I haven't actually tried to work out what it is yet. Need to spend a bit of time with my books. But I found that this lunchtime, I wasn't sure what it was, so I thought I'd hang on to it. And it was sitting on and feeding on a bit of a plant called Dog's Mercury, which is an interesting plant, can be an indicator of ancient woodland. It's a somewhat toxic plant as well. So I thought it'd be interesting to keep this, see what species the caterpillar is. So I took it back with me and I put it in a little container, and then I went back to work, got on with some work, and popped out. Finished. I thought I'd have another look at it and see what's happening. And what I spotted when I had a look at it was crawling out of the caterpillar was a little other insect larva, which I thought, is a thing that's known to happen. But what was going on was, I'll show you this on my other camera screen. So what I found crawling out of that caterpillar was some sort of little white maggoty critter, little white critter of some kind, some larva of some insect, coming out towards the rear there of that caterpillar. And what's going on there is that's a parasite of some kind, parasitoid technically. The distinction being a parasite doesn't kill its host, or doesn't have to kill its host, and a parasitoid does have to kill its host. And obviously this creature, by burrowing out of the body of this caterpillar, has killed the caterpillar, has probably eaten most of its internal organs as it was doing so, and has then popped out and is now doing its own thing. So I've been observing this for a little while, and it's still in here, and you can see it here. What it did was it crawled down, been limited how close we can get here, but it crawled down out of the caterpillar that it was living inside of, and it started to spin up its own little silk. And that's what's going on there. That's that parasitic larva spinning its own silken place in which to pupate. I'll come back to this. I took some pictures of it as it was going. So that's it as it's crawled out, and it's hanging down a little bit of silk thread there, just as it's crawled out of the caterpillar that has been feeding on the inside of. And yeah, and then what it did was it gradually lowered itself down. Oops, see if I can get this to focus, and started to spin up. Let me see if I can find a bit more. And eventually started to spin its own silk. So again, can't really magnify it enough here on HAPS just with the phone that I'm broadcasting on, so that's why I'm showing you pictures on the back of a screen. But it started to spin up its own silk there, and to start to prepare a little place where it can pupate. And we can zoom in on it live if I do this. Oops, not very in focus now, are we? But there it is now. And as you can probably see at the top there's still the head moving around, still spinning up that silk, getting itself ready to pupate and turn into whatever it's going to turn into. You see that there? spinning away, creating its silk. And if we go and have a look back here, it's not, this is it sort of live without the intervention of a SLR camera in the way. It's much harder to make out the details this way, so we'll go back to looking at the back of the camera in a minute. But that's spinning up, and that is some kind of parasite. I think, although if anybody knows better, do tell me, I think there's something Hymenopteran, something in the sort of wasps family. But there are also flies that do this, that parasitize caterpillars in this way. And yeah, there it is. It's just sitting there, you see, spinning away, producing its silk, producing the place where it's going to pupate, and then it will eventually turn into some kind of adult parasite. Now, what it will be, I'm not sure. I suspect if I do a bit of research and talk to a few people who are far more knowledgeable about this than I am, would be able to get it to at least order and possibly family just from the appearance of the larva. But species level identification would be likely to require it to rear it through, see what adult it turns into, and hopefully then be able to key out, work through an identification guide and work out what these are. But I find these parasitic things really fascinating. I think they're a really interesting bit of evolution and ecology. These have evolved to find the larva of another species, to get their eggs into that larva in some way, either by laying them on a plant so they get eaten, by putting them on the outside so they can burrow their way in, or by injecting them into the body. And then the larva of this parasite feeds inside that caterpillar. Would have been chewing away at this, and you know, when you saw the caterpillar as it was here, when I took the photograph of it earlier out in the field, no sign I could immediately see there that's got some alien critter living inside it. But crawling away inside there, eating its insides, was this rather horrific idea of a little other insect eating it away. That's now come out, and it's now preparing itself for its own adulthood. So we don't know what it's going to be, but I have reared things like this before, so I thought we'd have a quick look at an adult of a parasitic wasp that I reared from a parasitized pupa I found earlier in the year. This is not perhaps the clearest thing, but I found a caterpillar surrounded by a silky mass produced by some kind of parasitic wasp in Cornwall earlier this year, and I retained that because I thought that would be interesting to see what it is. And this is the insect that came out. I'll see how close I can get and get this to focus. It's probably about as close as I can get with it focusing, unfortunately. This I suspected was going to be a braconid wasp, which it proved to be, and something in the genus Cortesia. I've had a look at the key of this species, and this I think is Cortesia raphella, but just earlier in the week I took some other specimens of it to Gavin Board at the Natural History Museum, who's going to have a look and just confirm whether my identification's right, because I'm not an expert on this group of insects at all. So I could well have failed to interpret the key correctly. But that's the sort of thing that does this parasitizing of caterpillars. So that may be the sort of organism that is producing this larva that is spinning away here. You can just see off to the side on the leaf there, a bit of the caterpillar that it came out of, that it was parasitizing earlier. I don't really want to disturb it whilst it's spinning up, so I'm not going to try and take that caterpillar out and have a closer look at it or show you it anymore on here. But again, here is what it was like in life. One of the noctuid moths, Noctuidae, and it was feeding on a plant called dog's mercury, which we have a small clump of around here. And yes, it proved to have in it this larva, which came out. We'll zoom in there. Dropped down on a little silken thread and then started to spin its own silken casing. So I'm going to keep this. I'm going to hopefully successfully rear it on, and hopefully it will produce an adult which I'll be able to take out and identify. But I just thought that was interesting to share with people. I say it's the stuff of horror movies. The Alien movies were to some extent based on this sort of parasitic critter that lives inside you and then bursts its way out of your body. And I'll just quickly share that with people. And at some point, if it does come out and if it does get identified, I'll hop back on here and we can talk about it again. Cheers.